In this lesson, we will build functions accepting arguments. In short words, the process is very similar to passing parameters to scripts. Do you remember how it was done with the scripts? We got parameters named $1, $2, $3, and so on. Those parameters match the values given when the script was called. With functions, it is the same. Here, we also have parameters $1, $2, $3, and they match to the values given when the function is started. There are of course some strange surprises related to the function's parameters, so maybe don't skip that lesson. Okay, our example will base on following scenario. For a given user, the function should return path to the home directory of that user. The internals of the function will use some other commands, so it would be better to start with a short manual on how to get this path. I want to get home directory of the user Lucy. In such case, I can use grep command, give username as the first argument, here it is Lucy, and path to the password file as the second argument. That's a kind of simplification that I'm going to use here, but our goal is to develop a function, not to have a never-failing command searching for a user home directory. As a result, I have now a line taken from the password file describing the user Lucy. Now, from this line, we need to take only the last field. To get it, I will use the command cut. This command will split the line looking at colon as separator. Having the line splitted into separate columns, I will take the column number 6. That is what we are looking for, the home directory of the user Lucy. Knowing this pipeline, we can come back to the topic of function accepting parameters. In the script, I'm going to create a function. The function could be named user_dir. Now, to the variable home_dir, I will assign the result returned by the for a moment discussed command. The only difference comparing to the previous version of that command is that now I am going to use the variable $1. That immediately defines how the function should be called. When calling the function, I will need to pass the username as the first argument. So let's write code calling that function. It could be done like that. I will use the name of the function followed by the name of a user whose home directory should be found. We are ready. Let's execute the script. It seems that the function works correctly. As usually, we will need to modify the code a bit to get a maybe better version of the function. Suppose that the author of the function doesn't like to use variables named $1, $2, $3, and so on. He prefers to have something with more intuitive names. Well, actually, that's not a bad idea. That's why I will create now a variable $user, and in the first lines of the script I will assign it the value stored currently in the $1. Now, in the command searching for user home directory, I don't need to use a bit mysterious name $1. Instead, I can use $user. This change should not affect the way how the script works. Let's check. Everything is working as before, but is it true that entering our changes to the script, we just replaced one variable with a different one? Let's see. I will additionally display outside of the function the variables that are defined internally in the function. Will their value change here? Can we access them from the outside of the function? Execute the script and yes, the variables defined somewhere internally in the function are visible also outside of the function. If you have any experience in programming in other languages, such behavior may be very non-intuitive, very strange. I will not say it is bad or good, just it is like this, and it's good to be aware of that. The variables will, however, behave differently when the function will be called in alternative way. Here, I will call the function using notation $ and brackets. The function will return its result to the variable. Execute the script, and the home directory for user Lucy was found correctly. Additionally, the variables user and homedir were not changed by the function. Function has its own variable set that remains private. The variables are not published outside of the function. That's good. Why the behavior changed? That's because when we use dollar and brackets notation, then a new shell is started. In that new shell, the variables were of course changed, but when the function finished, the process finished as well, and we stayed with the old values of the variables. You may wonder why the variable user has value of vowel root. That is one of the environment variables that are set up just after creating connection to the shell. Here I'm opening a new connection, and immediately I can use the variable user, which value is the name of the current user. Let's come back to our script, to the previous version. We will call the function without dollar and brackets. Let's recall. When the script is running, the internal variables are after all visible outside of the function. Is it possible to have local variables defined in the function that will not be available outside of it? Yes, it's possible. It's enough to precede such variables with a word local. Let's test. When the script is running, the variables are not visible to the calling script. They were visible only internally within the function. User and homedir are now local and private variables of the function. Now everyone should be happy. We have now internal variables and we will not change by mistake the value of the variables outside of the function. That's much better. The conclusion is, whenever you have some variables that should not be visible outside of the function, just precede them with the word local. To recap the lesson, we have presented here how to work with variables and arguments. Generally, that works in the same way as when working with the scripts. So you pass arguments in the command line and internally in the function you work with $1, $2, $3 and so on. On the other side, the difference is that the variables defined internally in the function may stay visible to this entire script where the function was defined. To avoid that trap, simply use the word local in front of the variable name. That's all.